Hey guys, what is up, and welcome each and every one of you to a new League of Legends video. So today's video we'll be taking an early look into patch 8.16 on the PBE server, and there are going to be some quite significant changes. So as usual, if you guys end up enjoying this video for whatever reason, then don't forget to hit that like button, but let's not waste any more time and get right into it. So you're going to notice that throughout what we are going to be discussing in this early patch preview, the tank meta is coming back. Riot is essentially doing a full circle, and I don't really fully blame them because it does make the game interesting, but yeah, it does seem like it's about time for the tank meta to start creeping back up on us. So let's start things off by talking about Amumu, because Amumu is getting a buff and kind of like a new effect almost on his E abilities passive. So you guys already know how Amumu's Tantrum passive lets him essentially just take reduced physical damage, which is good against champions. It's even better against the jungle monsters and the clears, but apparently now this number is not going to be just a flat number. Now it'll actually scale 3% of Amumu's bonus armor and MR. So it's almost like Tankception, because not only does Amumu get tankier from building armor and MR, but on top of that, his passive for Tantrum will also get progressively stronger and stronger and stronger. So it's like a tank stat within a tank stat. I won't even be too surprised if people start trying to take Amumu over to the top lane and try making him work there by just going essentially full tank. But this is just the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot more to talk about, so let's go right into the next champions. Now for Leona, we have some changes coming over that are going to be kind of back and forth. Some parts of it seem like they're nerfing her tankiness, but then you'll see that they're actually buffing it at the same time. So the main culprit is going to be her W, Eclipse. You'll see the damage has actually been changed to now being overall lower as you rank it up. However, the cooldown has also been changed from being 14 at all ranks to now starting at 18 rank 1, but going all the way down to 10 at rank 5. You're also going to notice that the base armor and magic resistance that her W offers her has also been almost halved for both of them. But on the flip side, you'll see that the scaling for both the armor and MR offered by her W has essentially been doubled. But then moving on to her E ability, you'll see Zenith Blade, the damage has been increased as you rank up this ability. So it's almost as if they want Leona players to maybe still max her W, because they'll still give them, of course, the tanky stats, but she won't be just insanely tanky in the laning phase. However, as you kind of get further into the game, as you start getting the support tanky items, you will actually be probably even more tankier than the current Leona is. But to give Leona kind of other options, they buffed her E ability, so you can instead maybe max this ability first in the laning phase, then your W, and then your Q. But all in all, mid game to late game Leona is going to be quite damn tanky, so something to watch out for. Next, we have some buffs coming over to Maokai, our favorite tank in League of Legends. I mean, Maokai is one of those tanky champions where if he's meta, he is probably the best pick for tanks in general because of just how he works, his kits, and all that stuff. So let's take a look at the buffs. First of all, we have his move speed being ever so slightly increased, which is always a welcomed buff because movement speed in League of Legends is really strong. But then we also have a buff to his magic resist growth being increased from 1.25 to 1.75, which is actually a decent increase. Now you'll notice that his armor or nothing like that is being increased, so just the MR. So he's going to be a little bit more of a counterpick towards magic damage dealing champions, whether it's the whole enemy team or a lot of the enemy team, or maybe you're facing like a Rumble top lane or something like that. Maokai will be a very solid, strong pick. But moving along, we have a Sapling Toss as well, where the max damage against non-champions has been increased by 200, so it'll help him actually clear the waves a little bit easier and be a little bit stronger in the laning phase, so he can maybe just push in and roam or something like that. But I'm sure you guys can already see what's happening. All of these tank champions are getting buffs, whether it's just directly just straight to their tanky stats, whether it's to damage, whether it's a mix of the two, whether it's to late game stats, whatever. The meta, again, it's doing a full circle. The tank meta is approaching. But moving along to the next tank that's receiving some changes, we have Nautilus. The changes are going to be directly towards his W ability, and it's a buff and a nerf at the same time. So the shielding has been changed from giving him flat 65 at level 1 or 85 flat at level 5 with a up to 17% max HP to now only giving him 60 level 1, but all the way up to 100 by level 5. However, it caps out at scaling off of 13% maximum HP rather than 17. So a little bit stronger in the laning phase, especially if you max it out first, since the base has been actually increased as you rank it up. but it will be a little bit weaker late game since the scaling has been decreased by 4%. But on top of this, the duration of his W has been lowered by 4 seconds. So in other words, the actual shielding effect will last a little bit less on the champion, but the cooldown has been lowered from 18 out of all ranks down to 12 out of all ranks, and the cost has also been lowered by 20. So what I'm getting from this is, if you correctly use Nautilus's W, it's in fact going to be a little bit better overall in my opinion, except maybe really late into the game. But I'm sure with the math, with the cooldown reduction as well, if you just keep spamming it, you'll actually get more effectiveness out of this ability throughout the majority of the game than you currently do. It'll just come down to actually using his W at more or less correct times rather than just using it, having the duration being 10 seconds, and even if you misuse it, as in maybe a little too early or something, you'll still probably get the full benefits of the ability. Following this, we also have some buffs coming over to Ramus. What do you know? Yet another tank. Now, I don't really like when Ramus gets buffs because I think the champion is extremely one-dimensional and extremely anti-fun to play against. But on the contrary, I do love having a Ramus on my team. So the buffs to him is going to be as follows. Towards his W ability, his bonus armor has actually been increased by 10% every single rank, and his bonus magic resistance has also been increased by only 5 at every single rank. Now, Ramus is essentially the armor equivalent of Maokai, right? Maokai is known to be a little bit better against AP type champions, while Ramus is known to be a little bit better against AD type champions, which is why Ramus's bonus armor has been increased by 10% and his MR has only been increased by 5. Because in the past, his armor and MR just stats overall have been almost equal, and he was just insanely strong regardless of who he's facing, and that was really, really overpowered, and it was pretty much impossible to duel him. So it's good that Riot has kind of learned from that, but I mean, Ramus, again, he is getting some buffs, so expect his play rate to begin to rise up. Next up, we have yet another tank getting another buff. Now, this is going to be Sion, more towards his W. The permanent maximum HP that he gains from killing small enemies has been increased from 3 to 4, and from killing large enemies has been increased from 10 to 15. So TLDR, chilling in lane and just CSing will just make him ramp up on HP much more quickly, and on top of that, whenever hopefully they actually kill the cannon minion without missing it, he'll also ramp up on HP a little bit more quickly. If he gets ahead and he gets assists and or kills on champions, I mean, that's gonna ramp up his stuff a lot quickly as well. So all in all, Sion is yet another tank that's getting a buff, and yet another tank that you may want to start watching out for. And finally, the final champion we'll be talking about, that, as I'm sure you've already guessed, is also a tank receiving also some more buffs. That champion is none other than Tahm Kench, where Riot seems to be trying to make Tahm Kench more viable, maybe in the top lane rather than just support. So starting off with his Q ability Tongue Lash, the slow duration has been slightly lowered, but the cooldown has also been lowered, so a worthy trade-off. But then moving on to his W, the damage on his W ability has actually been changed to now giving him just more percent damage, or I guess base percent damage on the ability, but it scales less on AP. Now that's perfectly fine because honestly, who the hell even builds AP on this champion, right? If you play Tahm Kench, you're probably just building raw tanky stats, so you aren't really making use of the scaling regardless. And now that the base percent damage on his W is better, well, that's a massive plus. But then the Devour duration has actually been changed to now being 4 at all ranks rather than starting at 4 and going all the way up to 6. Now the enemy champion duration, so when you devour an enemy champion, it is still cut in half. So on the live service by rank 5, you'll actually devour them for 3 seconds, but now it'll only be 2 seconds regardless of rank. The cooldown on this ability has also been increased, you can see, by quite a substantial amount. Literally double the cooldown by level 1, but by level 6 it's only up by 6 extra seconds. The cost has been lowered from 90 to 60, but it has somewhat of a new effect. The W triggers half its normal cooldown on enemy cast, so if you devour an enemy. Now this is what kind of makes this massive cooldown increase not seem as bad. Now level 1 devouring an enemy will essentially put it on the exact same cooldown as it is on the live service at the very moment. But don't forget, his level 5 cooldown now is only 16 seconds, and if you do half of that, well, that's 8 seconds, which is a buff if you use it on enemy champions or minions or whatever. So in other words, some pretty solid buffs coming over to Tahm Kench as well, and I absolutely hate facing Tahm Kenches in the top lane as well, because this guy, if you build him tank, he is literally probably one of the hardest champions to kill in League of Legends, while also still dealing respectable damage. But moving along, let's talk about some rune changes, because as if, you know, buffing all these tanks isn't enough for Rito games, nope, they have to also do a bunch of nerfs to damage type runes. So starting off with the only keystone getting some changes, we have Electrocute, where the damage you'll see is just overall less. The base damage is less, the scaling is less. But on the bright side, at least the cooldown at the earlier ranks is half, but by the time you get to late game, it's only 5 seconds less. This is a buff and a nerf. It just depends on which champion you're playing. I mean, some champions that can proc Electrocute easily in lane and can just keep the harass going over and over, it's probably a buff actually. But champions that are more just focused on the all-in, like maybe a jungle Rengar, for instance, is the first thing that comes to mind. Maybe even a jungle Kha'Zix, this is overall a nerf. But then moving along to cheap shot, you can see the damage here is just flat out lower at the earlier ranks, but at least it ramps up to the same as you get later into the game. We also have sudden impact with the lethality bonus and the magic penetration bonus have both been lowered, with lethality being lowered by 3, while the magic pen bonus has been lowered by 2. The overall stats by celerity has also been lowered by quite a decent amount actually. I'm not entirely sure why they went that ham on it. I mean, this is a little bit too crazy. And last but not least, we also have some nerfs coming over to Scorch, where the damage has been lowered to now starting at 10 and only going up to 30, but at least the cooldown has been lowered by half. So half the damage, but half the cooldown. Which means that Scorch is essentially worse at all-ins, but it's a little bit better when it comes to just consistent harass. But either way guys, that is going to be it for this video. There you have it. I mean, a bunch of changes on the PvE server already, on top of also the new game mode that I'm sure you guys already know about, so I didn't bother mentioning that. But yeah, it seems like the new meta is approaching, boys and girls. The tank meta is right in front of us. And I mean, maybe even next patch, if not next patch, then definitely the patch after, it is going to be in full fruition. And with all of these nerfs coming over to the damage runes, I mean, yeah, it's gonna be quite an interesting patch next patch. So if you guys end up enjoying this video, then don't forget to hit that like button. Let me know what you think about these changes down below. Are you excited for the tank meta to come back? Are you not excited? Why or why not? But yeah guys, thank you so much for watching. Make sure to hit that like button if you did enjoy. Subscribe if you haven't. Check out my other videos as well. Share with your friends so everyone else can be aware of the current tank meta that is right in front of us. But yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you for